Welcome back to Quiet Riot Sunday School. An unholy slice of politics in between our main shows on a Thursday. I'm Alex.
And I'm Naomi. We've got a few things to update you on from our podcast pulpit today.
We'll be giving a mini update on the US presidential campaign, airing our thoughts about Nigel Farage's outside earnings,
and bringing you some much requested, let's call it information, maybe gossip, about the genesis of Quiet Riot and how you can participate in its baptism.
And by that she means give us money.
Quiet Riot. The Democratic National Conference starts tomorrow in Chicago, Monday the 19th, and it's on for 4 days. It's prime time, generally speaking, 6 till 10 p.m, so between midnight and 4 a.m. UK time. So I'm going to be listening out for an Alex Andreu Midnight Mass special this week.
I am an addict, aren't I?
You are, and a night owl, and I am a lark.
That's true. The location is significant, I think. I was looking up some stats, and no other city in the US has hosted as many presidential conventions as Chicago. It has welcomed 26 altogether,
Wow.
14 Republican, and 12, including this year's, Democratic. And it's often seen as a sort of extension of the electoral strategy because it's one of the states known as the Blue Wall states, Illinois, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, which were quite reliably blue. Remember, blue is Democratic in America and red is Republican. Very confusing. But support has been eroding recently in Midwestern states like Wisconsin and Michigan. They were both always Democratic throughout the 90s and early 2000s, but they're now toss-up states. Trump won both of them in 2016, for instance.
Have you ever been to Chicago?
I have family there.
Oh.
My mother's youngest brother, Minas, is in Chicago with his beautiful family, my cousins and his wife, Michelle.
I went there probably about 8 years ago for work. Loved it, had a great time. But I do sort of think that it really does stand out from the rest of the Midwest because I then had to go around Indiana and Michigan and other places for work. And that was quite terrifying. There were some areas. I remember pulling into a kind of lakeside diner, and it was almost as if you could see tumbleweed going across the beach of the lake, and went in, and there's sort of one waitress serving, and she sort of eyeballed me for quite clearly not being a local, asked me what I wanted, and then over the tannoy, the music on repeat was this song called Beer is Good But God is Great. And it was a bit spooky, and I was the only person in there, and I thought, I've seen many a horror film that begin like this.
Naomi, to be honest, with a difference in musical taste, you could be describing my first visit to Dorset. Because it was a little bit like that.
Well, my dog Wrigley is also from Chicago. He was born on a small farm in Indiana, but then he grew up in Chicago until he was 1 when he moved back to the UK. So yeah, you and I both have our Chicago links, but we have diverged from the DNC here. Talk us through
yes. Okay. So
in the polls, Alex. What are they telling us?
Well, look, a few people on the right of the media, they got quite excited about a couple of polls showing the gap narrowing again between Harris and Trump. But they were outliers. The aggregate on 538, and we will drop a link in the show notes to 538 because it's an invaluable resource. They basically gather all the polling and do aggregate things and tracker polls and stuff like that. It is geek heaven.
Is it Nate Silver's site, 538?
ABC News.
Okay.
It's affiliated with ABC News.
I think he founded it.
Okay.
And then probably made a packet when he sold it off to ABC.
Or maybe he hasn't. Maybe it's just a cohabitation.
Anyway, his book, The Signal and the Noise, is worth reading.
So if you look at the aggregates on a weekly basis, which is a lot more stable, today the difference is 2.8 points. So Harris is 2.8 points ahead. Last Sunday, she was 2.4 points ahead. The Sunday before, she was 2.1 points ahead. The Sunday before that, which was just after she was announced, was 0.2 points ahead. And before that, it was Trump ahead all the time for months and months. So I'm not sure the trend would justify getting excited, especially considering the DNC, the Democratic National Convention, is coming up, which means that Democrats will monopolize the media coverage for the next week, pretty much. So the Democratic Convention, it streams live on its own website. We will drop that link in the notes for you in case you
don't
fancy.
bother, because Alex is going to watch it and tell you all
In case
about it.
people might fancy staying up with me. There's not a detailed schedule yet, I suspect, for security reasons, but the expectation is that Hillary Clinton will address the convention on Monday, Obama on Tuesday, Bill Clinton on Wednesday will introduce the VP nominee, Tim Walz. Kamala Harris will close out the convention with her acceptance speech on Thursday night. And while I'm on this, not to reopen the whole Kamala can of worms, but I think progressive Brits, in their zeal to get it right, have now started overcorrecting a little bit with a sort of very plummy Kamala, and her name has taken on the cadence of Parmaham. So split the difference, tread a little bit lighter, and listen to the man.
Fundraiser, we're having a nice time. I happen to mention that Kamala Harris is the best-looking Attorney General in the country. A dear friend of mine, so I want everybody to do right by her. San Francisco District Attorney Kamala Harris. And in my friend Kamala Harris, he's chosen an ideal partner.
Quiet, Riot.
Now, man of the people, Nigel Farage, has got himself in a bit of bother.
I see what you did there.
Do you know, I posted it on Twitter and people were loving it. It's not mine. It's actually Gordon Brown's. It was Gordon Brown that first dubbed him man of the people. Anyway, so he's got himself in a little bit of bother this week after publishing his financial interests in the Commons Register. And not to boast, but I said this in our election wash-up. You may remember that one of the difficulties he would face now that he's an MP would be over declaration. And wait for his expenses claims. Those won't come until a few months later. So why is he in trouble?
Well, he is earning more in a month from outside earnings. I have heard people on Twitter say, let's not call them earnings, let's just call it income, because he's not actually doing a hell of a lot of work to rake this cash in. But anyway, technical term, his outside earnings, he makes more in a month than he does in a year as being an MP.
Oh.
So MPs generally get around the 90,000 mark. He gets about 91,000 for being a parliamentarian a year, but he gets 97,000 a month for presenting GB News. He gets another 4,000 a month for writing his Telegraph column and other things he does, Cameo, blah, 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 other things come in. That the whole list is there now on the Register of Interest. You can see it. And I think I'd probably take a slightly more liberal view on this to say Keir Starmer, who we know really wants to clamp down on second jobs for parliamentarians. My own view is, well, it's a foolish move, but be judged for it, because he needs to be judged on whether he is really representing the people of Clacton, the vast majority of whom could only dream of.
Sorry, so you think Starmer clamping down on second jobs is a foolish move?
No, sorry.
Oh.
I think it is a foolish move to earn so much in extra jobs when you are a parliamentarian, but I think you need to be judged on that rather than have it completely banned.
Yeah.
So how do we judge him? Well, let's have a look at what he's done so far. He has not yet tabled a single written question in the House of Commons on behalf of the people of Clacton. We don't know if he's holding regular advice surgeries. He really ought to be holding constituency meetings on a weekly basis in Clacton. How often is he even in the constituency? And when you tot up all of the time that he himself has now estimated he works in terms of outside extra-parliamentary work, all of his TV appearances, his cameo recordings, writing columns, it's 9 full working days a month. So at best, he is a part-time MP. So I think it's very much up to the people of Clacton to decide whether they're getting what they should be getting. But I do think, well, I mean, what do you think, Alex, about just like the thing that I find annoying about it is that society permits us to make a career out of railing against the elites while pocketing as much, if not more, cash than any normal person would describe as an elite.
I find it very interesting that part of his income is from X, Twitter. He makes about $1,500, it looks like, a month, because his blue tick is monetized. And there was a really interesting case this week of someone who was sentenced to jail for 3 years for basically inciting hatred. And their account is monetized in exactly the same way. It's a blue tick, and they make about $1,500. That is one area where I think I really would look at. If you're in an environment where the algorithm basically favors outrage and hate and raising the temperature, and you're making money out of it, and people are getting hurt because of it, the moment people start making money out of it, Twitter becomes a publisher of that content.
Yeah.
So I think there's one difficult area there. I mean, strangely, as long as Nigel Farage absented himself from any parliamentary debate to do with, let's say, broadcasting licenses and Ofcom standards and and things like that, because he's employed, his main payer of bills, okay, is GB News.
And this I find incredible about our Westminster democracy. Lots of our listeners probably have been involved in local government or are currently councillors. If you have any vague conflict of interest as a councillor, you have to leave the chamber. You cannot be a part of it. Sometimes your entire group has to leave and not be part of the decision-making process. Whereas in the House of Commons, the House of Lords, you can sit there and participate with your conflict of interest till the cows come home. It's incredible.
As you know, this is a big bugbear of mine, and I've been talking about it for years. This notion that by declaring something, the conflict of interest goes away is just a nonsense. The system of declaration is not there to resolve conflicts of interest. It's there to identify
who
them.
has
Absolutely.
The conflict and make sure that
absolutely. The notion that this idea of above board, that by something being above board, I remember so clearly Andrew Lansley, when he was health secretary, that his private office was taking large donations from the wife of an owner of a private healthcare firm. How is this possible? How is it possible for the education secretary, Gillian Keegan, to be the wife of someone that just got a massive contract from the department? I'm not saying there was impropriety, but I'm saying that there has to be a lack of appearance of any impropriety. That's what builds trust in the system. It doesn't matter whether there is something dodgy going on. It has to look whiter than white. And so I find that aspect of it very, very weird. And, there's also the trip to the US.
Oh, yeah. So, listeners, if you didn't see the detail in this, some crypto bro funded Farage's little jaunt over to the USA after Trump was shot. I don't know if you remember, he's there being like, oh, I came as soon as I heard the news. I thought he would need my support. And then he's interviewed and people say, but did he want you to come? Well, I'm sure he appreciates the support. And are you actually going to see him? I don't know. I mean, Trump clearly didn't give a shit about Farage coming, didn't want to see him. He is not important. But Farage managed to convince some crypto bro to fork out over £30,000
for him and an aide.
For him to and probably not even see Trump.
For two people for 4 nights, 32 grand. In what universe?
I mean, what hilariously bad value for money. What did this dude think he was getting?
But that is a fair question. What is that man getting for his 32 grand? And I think actually that's the aspect that gets lost in all of this, because it's declared and because there's a sort of attitude on the right of politics that, well, good for him. No. In commercial relationships, and conservatives know this as well as anyone, there is offer, acceptance, and consideration.
Yep.
What you have to ask is, what are these people getting for that huge amount of money that they keep pumping into our political system? Because if they were getting nothing, they wouldn't keep doing it. They're not philanthropists, they're not charities. They are commercial entities. And when they bung someone 30 grand to go on a trip to America, which incidentally he's put down on the register as being there to stand by a friend and showcase Clacton on the international stage. I don't think he mentioned Clacton while he went. Did you not know this? Did you not see this bit? He's put it down as showcasing Clacton on the international stage. I mean, really, do fuck off.
I look forward to, swathes of Americans turning up.
And he's such a greedy fucker because he's still doing cameos.
Yeah.
You can still pay him $90 to say
Anything.
whatever, to say anything, however demeaning it is, to say happy birthday, or to say stuff like this.
Gabecoin has launched an attack against sus Doge imposter. Emergency meeting vote. Eject Doge. I repeat, eject Doge. Amogus, Amogus, Amogus. Ground control to Major Gabe. Prepare to overthrow the bogus Doge.
Quiet, Riot. Since we birthed our baby podcast, many of you have been asking us why we chose to launch our own show, and also how you might be able to help us out a bit.
So we thought we'd spill the tea. Naomi, what was it that made you want to start a new show?
That's a great question, Alex. I think I'd always wanted...
Don't do that interview shit to me.
I'd always wanted to do another show. I didn't want to stop broadcasting and having a podcast. I love podcasting. It's been one of the joyous things I've done mid-career and learned how to do, and I loved doing it. And I really loved that sense of a gang and having your people and your tribe around you and creating that space where you don't have to have the faux balance that a lot of the broadcast channels have to do or feel they have to do and end up not doing, because they will have somebody completely swivel-eyed loon on commenting about why the earth is flat against a leading climate professor from a world-leading institution. And that isn't balanced. It's boring. It's insulting the viewer intelligence, etc. So I really wanted a show where we could try and get some genuine consensus between soft left, centre right, at a time when the far right is in ascendancy in many, many, many areas of the globe. I think it is more important than ever for us to put our differences aside if we are not from the extreme poles of either part of politics, to find a way through to defeating them and to defeating populism. I also wanted editorial control. I wanted to, work with a product where we could make our own decisions about when we put shows out, who we had on, and have the flexibility that came with that, and the love and the warmth. And I wanted to do it with you. I wanted to do it with my friends. I didn't want to be doing shows week by week with different people who maybe I didn't have rapport with, I didn't have time to get to know, in order to build that rapport that I think then can come across on a show. And I think doing it with people you admire and love and respect and have known for a very long time means you have so much elasticity in your relationship and your friendship that you can disagree agreeably. Because it's not as brittle as with somebody new.
That's so true. And you don't have to worry, if I upset them, will they come back on the show, or will it put off other guests or whatever? The fact that we're such good friends is the core of it.
For sure.
And I agree that there is incredible joy in having, in being a little bit guerrilla fighter-like.
Yeah.
We decide to record something on this and we just do it. Or, I'm up in the middle of the night and something happened and I just do 10 minutes. I love that. I love that, the immediacy of just spilling content out there. But for me, the biggest thing, I guess, was I wanted a sense of diversity, I think, both on topics and on guests. One of the things I'm proudest of for our first 12 weeks, our first 3 months almost, is that we've done shows about the Greens, about the Lib Dems, about the SNP. We've done 2 things on Northern Ireland. We've done a show on Wales, and there's another one coming up. And we had Henry Morris, so we devoted a segment of the main show to Wales. And we've done shows on Scotland, and there's one coming next week on the Conservative leadership election in Scotland. As we promised to you 2 days ago, we have lined someone up and we're doing this next week. And that's the joy of it.
Yeah.
But also in terms of the panel composition, we hope that you have noticed that our mix of guests is not the usual. Women, LGBT people, BAME guests, non-Brits, they've been the majority on every single one of our panel shows. And, the straight, white, Oxbridge-educated British man with 2 weekly columns in the national press already, he's an endangered species in our studio. And that's not because we have anything against them. Some of my best friends are straight, white guys. But because if you want those views, well, pick up any paper, tune into any channel, download any other podcast.
Exactly.
They're not difficult to find. But to have 2 people like Dawn Butler and Salma Shah on our last show being given the space to debate race relations, integration, difficult things like that. One coming
in long form, whereas if you're doing that on Newsnight, you've maybe got 2 or 3 minutes
exactly.
each. It does a disservice to the whole topic, to the individuals, everything.
And the entire thing is focused, in my view, on amplifying points of difference. Every single show. Like if you saw those specific 2 guests on any other show that does a 5-minute thing where they ping points to each other, the emphasis will be on their disagreement. And to me, it was just really important to have a place where we can give the space to those 2 immensely intelligent women with completely different political views in a warmer environment, and then go on to talk about something that we all agreed on and have a massive laugh. Some listeners found it challenging,
They did.
I got a few messages that were like, didn't challenge X enough or Y enough. And I just think we're going to have to navigate this together because we don't know what we're doing. For me, what's become the watchword is to give you the ability to understand the guest's position rather than to correct it according to what my position is. I think we saw that very clearly with the interview I did with John Nicholson, where he said quite a lot of stuff that I thought was a little bit against what I would have thought was the orthodox analysis of some issues. But I just shut my mouth and gave him time and space and pitched the questions. And what happened was that a lot of listeners came back, and some of them thought he was amazing, and some of them thought he made a tit of himself. And but that's great. That's fantastic in my mind, because it means I'm not guiding you. I'm not shepherding you towards a particular opinion. I'm just letting you hear what that particular viewpoint is, and you can make up your own mind.
And 12 weeks in, we are doing incredibly well, thanks to all of you hoovering up our content. We've smashed through 250,000 downloads. We've grown the Quiet Riot following on various social media platforms, but we do need to begin to make the show sustainable. And that does mean asking those of you who are able to, big emphasis on that, to support us financially.
And we have to say here that from day one, we paid every contributor like slightly more than the going rate. And that was absolutely vital to us. I mean, okay, I say every contributor. There are some mates that did it for free, and a few people that, when you're an MP and you come on there to represent your party, we're not going to pay you as a contributor. And it's basically coming out of our own pocket at the moment.
And that was for us a very important thing at the beginning when we were thinking about doing this and talking to Kenny about how are we going to structure this, what might our outlay need to be. And the non-negotiable from all three of us was, if you've got the right person on discussing the right topic, you pay them the right way.
So we've put something in place for you to support us if you want. We're finding our feet. We don't know if this will be the final solution, as it were. We might hear back from you on how you're finding the experience, because that's the main thing. Crucially, we want the main installments on the show, so the main show on Thursday and Sunday school, whenever we do it, to be free to everyone. I don't want to get into this situation where there are special sections that only paying guests can hear, almost blackmailing your audience to say you get to hear our take 2 days earlier if you pay us money. Otherwise, you get our reaction to the news after it's not news anymore.
I've never
No,
understood
but
that one.
because seriously, because if we have progressive values, then we need to reflect them. And one way in which we do that is to pay everyone properly. The second way in which we do that, I think, is to recognize that some people can't afford to pay a subscription and some people can. And we just have to put this out generously, with goodwill and good energy, and trust that enough people who can afford to pay will do it, not because they get the thing a day early or they get an extra section at the end, but because they want to help us keep making it and keep making it with those exact progressive values at the core of it. I mean, that doesn't mean we're not going to give you some reward for helping us. We might do bonus bits of content that are basically extraneous to the main show, right? That you don't need to hear every week in order to keep up with the narrative arc of what's going on in our politics, if you want. We might give you like early bird access to live show tickets. Yes, there is a live show coming up. More details on that in a few days. We will provide you with an online group where you can chat with other people and we can get involved. We're looking at some good Quiet Riot merchandise, maybe at significant discount. So, that's the basic principle, right? But we'll work it out together.
Exactly. So we've set up something called a Ko-fi account. So that's KO-FI, where those who would like to and are able to can give us either a one-off donation that we can put towards things like better sound equipment, or you can join a monthly membership tier to help us make more shows. We'll leave a link in the show notes, and we will be so incredibly grateful for anything at all that you can do to help keep the show going. And we absolutely don't need Farage income levels, but we do need something to make it sustainable. And as Alex said, let us know what kinds of things you would hope to see in a value proposition that might make you more inclined to sign up for a monthly subscription. And thank you very, very, very much in advance. As Alex says, this is not a way to make exclusive content for an exclusive audience. It's to help us carry on being as inclusive as we believe the show really needs to be.
Here. The basic website is ko-fi, ko-fi.com/Quiet Riot Pod. And of course, we'll pop it in the show notes and we'll put it out on social media. Keep an eye out for other announcements in the coming weeks about merchandise, which is coming very soon, and about the live show, which is coming very soon. We will endeavor to meet as many of you as possible and get on those message boards on Ko-fi and chat to as many of you as possible, because what we want more than anything is for you to feel that this is your show, that you can suggest topics, that you can suggest guests, that you can suggest different tiers of support, that you can suggest different rewards, and that you feel you have a stake in this and you're helping shape it with us. Because the flip side of not being straight white Oxbridge educated British guys is that we accept that in many, many respects we don't know what we're doing.
And we don't have any bloody money.
But we're doing it with you.
Amen. And that is it for Quiet Riot Sunday School. Check out Ko-fi and leave us a review on Apple to help others find the show. I think we're also figuring out how to get the show onto YouTube Music too, aren't we, Alex?
We've done it, I think. So I think on this episode, we will include a link so that you can now play the show directly from your Android phone. Spread the word on social media. As always, you can find us at Quiet Riot Pod on old Twitter or quietriotpod.bsky.social on Blue Sky, which is the social medium that we are actively promoting at the moment. It really does feel lovely in there. I will be doing a little solo explanation of how Blue Sky works, the hints and tips and pitfalls and what to look out for, and what I've made of coming across in the first few months. It is to me quite extraordinary that my legacy account, of course, is nowhere near where it was on Twitter, but I'm getting a lot of lovely engagement. But the Quiet Riot Pod account already has more followers than the one on Twitter has. And send us emails if you want to quietriotpod@gmail.com.
We'll be back on Thursday with another bumper episode. In the meantime, thank you for listening, and we'll see you again very soon.
And eject Doge. I repeat, eject Doge.
Quiet Riot is an audio production by Cooler Heads with Naomi Smith, Alex Andreou and Kenny Campbell. Music by Mariana Sangeeta, artwork by Simona Canelu. Quiet Riot is a co-production with Soundstone Global. Quiet Riot.
And we've got some starter packs on our profile to help you follow a bunch of really interesting people very quickly with one click. Let me do that again. Bloody Kenny. It had to be Kenny that was messaging us.